We left off with Genesis with Jacob, the 12 sons, and then eventually all their descendants grown in number in Egypt, which again is fulfilling the promise that God made to Abraham, that they're going to have many descendants. But the problem is that they're in Egypt. And yesterday's first reading, we're introduced to the fact that maybe about 400 years later, as generation after generation continued to multiply and multiply very well. Remember how this whole story started. This whole story started with Abraham and Sarah struggling to have one child. And now it's like they can't stop. You know, it's so many. And so it's so many that Pharaoh notices and says, this is a problem. You know, this is a problem. These people could join with our enemies and take us over. And so they're enslaved. And remember, they're down there because of comforts. They're down there to alleviate a problem of famine. That's how they ended up there in the first place, though they never made their way back to Israel. They never made their way back to the place where God intended to have them. They stayed down in Egypt because it was comfortable and they had their security. At least they thought. But now the comfort and security has turned into slavery. And so, as the people are crying out to God, as often in Scripture, especially in the Old Testament, God is going to alleviate that problem, but in a very slow way, okay? So God's answer is always usually the introduction to our hero figure. And so in this case, as you know, in the book of Exodus, our hero is Moses. But again, notice that Moses has to grow up. So there's going to be years of slavery, years of, are we going to be saved from this? And so the first reading, from chapter 2 of today's first reading, begins with an introduction. Moses is from the house of Levi. That's going to be eventually the priest. Okay, so Moses is a priest, just like his brother Aaron. At that time, the Pharaoh has ordered infanticide, okay, meaning all the Hebrew males are to be killed. And so out of fear, the mother of Moses puts him in a basket down the Nile River. Now, that's kind of significant that the text doesn't give us this, but the Egyptians considered the Nile River to be a god. Okay, it was one of their most important gods. As you know from Egypt, really their whole economy was based on the Nile River. Outside of the Nile River, there's really not much resources for them. It's a lot of desert, a lot of dry land. And so the Nile River, very important. And we're going to see that also come into play later on in the story. And so when Pharaoh's daughter sees this child floating down the Nile River to the bank to her, she considers it a gift from the Nile River god. And that's why she takes it and embraces it and nurses it. And eventually, though, as we know, as readers of the story, we know it's really the God of Israel that's doing all this. Because again, what happens is that Pharaoh actually takes Moses' mom to nurse the child. But at the same time, Moses' mother is going to have to what? She's going to have to give him up. Because Pharaoh's daughter is going to adopt him as one of her sons. So you can see right here kind of the pain, okay, as part of this slavery that she herself. Again, Scripture doesn't really give us details of that, but I would just assume as she's nursing the child, eventually the child is going to be adopted by Pharaoh's daughter. Then we kind of fast forward through the life of Moses, and Moses has grown up. Moses sees an Egyptian beating up one of his fellow Hebrew people. Moses, out of really unjust, unrighteous anger, you can say he kind of overdid it, kills the Egyptian man. But again, it gives us the mindset that Moses is going to be the protector of the Hebrew people. This is God's answer to the prayers, okay, of the Hebrew people. He's going to be their guide and their protector. So again, almost in a sarcastic way, but a very truthful way, when the next day he sees a fellow Hebrew beating up another Hebrew people, what does he say? He says this, "Who has appointed you ruler and judge over us?" Well, the answer is going to be God. Okay? That's going to be God. But then Moses, again, realizing that everybody knows what he did, flees off into the wilderness, and that's where our first reading stops for today, and that's where we're going to stop as well. But there is one thing that I am going to draw out, and I want you to remember this, okay, as we read through the story of Exodus. The Hebrew people are forced to serve Pharaoh. The Hebrew word for that is abad, A-B-A-D. That's an important word because it's going to be the same word that's also going to be used for worship. And so, this is going to be a very important theme throughout the whole book of Exodus. Who are the Hebrew people going to serve/worship? Because it's the same word with double meanings. Are they going to serve Pharaoh or are they going to worship God? Okay, remember that. Very important. I'm going to hit on it so many times over the next 2-3 weeks that we go. It's going to be a constant dilemma that they're going to face. May God bless you.